Signs, Joaquin Phoenix and Mel Gibson. Signs, do this, don't do that, can't you read? Signs, Macaulay Culkin's creepy brother. Do this, don't do that, can't you read? Signs, long-haired creepy people do not apply, because the sign says do not apply. Signs everywhere, signs. Looking at the Macaulay Culkin brothers sign. Do this, don't do that. The best place to start with M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong songs. Signs is the best place to start with M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong films. Upon first glance, though, Shyamalan films represent a typical mass consumption Hitchcock meets Hollywood Spielberg homage. But I think there's a lot more at work in these films that we can talk about. Signs, I think, is about the alien arrival. Here's me with an alien-shaped head, and you can see me here in the lot where the crop circles first appeared, and I'm doing the Joaquin Phoenix pose. But as I've said many times, I think the alien invasion narrative was a long-time psyop to replace Western theology, more or less. And I mean Western theology, not Latin Roman Catholic, but essentially biblical theology in the tradition of the West. Now we're supposed, I think, to accept a new mythology that blends seamlessly with scientism, not science, and that is, of course, the alien mythology. Now, in the 60s, the Brookings Institute was commissioned by NASA, and Brookings, of course, is one of the top think tanks, to put out a report on what would happen in the case of alien arrival or alien discovery. And the report reads as follows: the Christian religion would be particularly compromised by the discovery of extraterrestrial life, since it makes so much of the Incarnation as a historical event under the knowledge of the good news of Jesus. Now, this fact is irreconcilable with divine providence. So I think Signs is a film that deals precisely with this question. In it, Mel Gibson plays Father Graham Hess, an ex-Anglican priest who, given his wife's death, has lost his faith and fallen into atheism. The family, as a result, suffers. And what's interesting is that you can see in this family and in this small town a microcosm of the rest of America and the West in general, and the spiritual crisis. Because, of course, the family has been destroyed. You notice the mother's missing. The male archetype is not living up to his role. He's, in fact, pretty weak, and he's lets the kids kind of run the show. And the brother, Joaquin Merrill, has moved in with them. And I think this is symbolic. There's a lot more going on in this film than you would tend to think. And I think we should give Shyamalan some credit for that. And I want to point out that, in my view, crop circles tend to be most of the time hoaxes, but what's probably going on is some kind of psychological operation, maybe some kind of advanced technology, drone technology, is used in the inexplicable cases to freak people out. And it suggests to everyone that there are aliens and UFOs and extraterrestrial visitors and the space beings, space brothers, nanu. But I don't think we need to go there. I think that this film is really more so dealing with the possibility of the demonic, and that the social engineers and the technocrats who are behind the military-industrial alien myth, that they're really trying to engineer a new worldview. And I think maybe Shyamalan is suggesting that, because even though the film is overtly about aliens, you'll notice they actually have a lot of characteristics that are not, quote, alien. They tend to be more demonic. We're told, for example, that they harvest humans. They're here to harvest souls. They don't really care about the resources of the planet or whatever. It's really just about stacking souls. Now, the entities have a lot of superhuman abilities, which could suggest the demonic. They leap on top of roofs, they vanish out of nowhere, and every glass of water is contaminated. This is crucial because Bo, the Abigail Breslin character, the little girl, consistently points out that the water is contaminated. She won't drink it. Now, this could suggest, on a deeper level, poisoning of the water and poisoning of the air, chemtrails, aerosol engineering, and so forth. And I say that because if you remember at the end of the film, the aliens also use, we're told, gas. They gas the population and knock them out and carry the bodies away. So that could suggest some kind of biological warfare on the part of the elites. And another interesting thing to the film that nobody points out is that everybody has their own pet theory as to what's going on. You have the gray-haired, ponytail, liberal bookstore owner who's convinced that the whole phenomenon is merely product placement and money. He sees it as a greed scam. Others see it as hoaxes. Of course, Graham, the Mel Gibson character, sees it all as a giant hoax. But none of them really have a full picture, except for maybe Morgan. Morgan has the most insight, and he eventually convinces Meryl that what's going on is of some kind of other explanation. In his case, of course, UFO. So he immediately buys into the UFO narrative. But what's funny is that nobody else is willing to consider anything metaphysical or spiritual or beyond the pale of reductionism. All of the other explanations are money, greed, scams, hoaxes. Even the military guy at the recruitment office, if you remember, points out that it's terrorists, asymmetrical warfare on the part of terrorists. Now, that's interesting because at one point there's a curious quote by Merrill, where he explains that this is all the work of nerds, guys who couldn't get girlfriends, and they devise cryptography codes and ciphers together for secret societies. Now, he's joking, but I think that secret society line is kind of a clue, and perhaps Shyamalan is telling us that who really runs the alien phenomena is occult secret societies, aka intelligence agencies. And these signals that are being received are very similar to number stations and the symbolism of number stations. If you read my analysis that I did of number stations in an article called "A Number Station in Your Game Theory: A Number Station in Your Pocket," I talk about how the history of the rise of the internet is out of espionage and the military-industrial complex. And that's because it was all about number stations relaying information in a coded form, and how could they transfer information from one place to another. Hence, the internet came about, and so forth and so on. So you can check that article out at jaysanalysis.com. But what I want to point out is that the film has obvious reference to Arthur C. Clarke's Childhood's End. And Arthur C. Clarke, of course, was in the circles of Crowley and other esoteric hermeticists who believe that they were actually tapping into the gods or more or less demonic forces. So in the Arthur Clarke circles, they literally thought that the overlords, as they're called, were in some form spiritual entities or demonic. And that's the context for signs, interestingly, as I argue in my article. It's not about disclosure. It's about how are we going to interpret these signs and the propaganda and all of the different explanations and worldviews that people have. And what's neat about the film is that they don't actually interpret the phenomena correctly and figure out a way to survive until they heal their family problems and issues. So once Graham and Morgan heal their hatred between one another, if you remember, Morgan hates his father, and in a mirrored fashion, Mel Gibson tells God, he says, "I hate you." So he hates his heavenly father. So there's this mirrored hatred that's going on. And in a way, the family members all dislike one another until they come to discover the truth about their relationships and the truth about spirituality and metaphysics and so forth. And that's because, as Paul says, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and rulers of the darkness of this world. And he's actually talking about the demonic hierarchy, the gods. So I think that there's a lot more going on in this film, and you can even get into the water baptism symbolism, which is what ultimately runs the alien creatures off, who appear to have cloven hoofs, interestingly. There's more of that in my analysis. It's pretty lengthy. You can go read that at Jay's Analysis. But thanks for listening. If you like this analysis, check out my book, Esoteric Hollywood. You can buy signed copies at my site. I have about 90 5-star ratings now within the last 5 months. Very, very excellent ratings. Definitely a book you want to get and check out. Thanks for watching.